Hi everyone, I'm Christy with Christy's Handmade Creations, and I'm going to be going over how to make one of these fabric rugs step by step.
Let's start off with the common supplies you may use. You need some fabric. They have Jelly Roll fabric bundles like this. You can use batting or any material that you would like to use. I get the pre-cut here because I find it easier. Then you're going to need lots of thread. I use all-purpose, but user's choice as well. And then I use this handy tool. It helps fold it into the fabric ropes. It's called the Gypsy Jelly Roll Tube Maker. And then, of course, I use some pins and clips. This helps me when I'm folding my fabric and sewing around and things like that. I'm going to need some heavy-duty needles. I like the Genome purple needles. And then a seam guide, magnetic seam guide. This helps me just to keep my seams nice and straight when I'm sewing. So these aren't always necessary, but, you know, these are some of the additional tools I like to use. Just to show you what I like to use when I'm sewing my rugs. The main items are your fabric, your batting, your thread, and your needles. So here I'm taking my pre-cut Jelly Roll fabric, and I'm just unwinding it, and I'm going to check out the fabric. So you can totally leave these in order if you'd like. That's what they're meant to be used for, but I always like to rearrange them how I like to do them. I find it fun to just, figure out a different order and recreate a different pattern. So what I do is I just lay all my strips out like this, and I kind of just get a feel for what I want to start with. And so I lay them out, I look them over, and then I start to stack them. Here you can see how I have them stacked. The one on the left is going to be my middle start, and then this is going out. And then when I'm laying it out here, I'm trying to figure out how I want them to blend together from each strip. So I'm rearranging and figuring out exactly which placement I want. So it's not necessary to do this, but it's just something I like. I like to have my fabric kind of blend together, so I look for the same color tones. So that yellow, I'm trying to see which one kind of will go good so it doesn't have that like hard break between the colors and the patterns. There's no right or wrong way to the order. It's just kind of a personal preference and how you want to do it. And there's all sorts of different combinations and ways you can do these rugs, which I think is what makes it so fun. The possibilities are almost endless, you know? So here's the order that I came up with. I'm starting with the green in the middle, and then this is working all the way to the outside. I generally like to have a darker color on the very outside. So next step is we're going to attach all of the fabric strips together. You can either sew them across like this or on the diagonal. And so you're going to cross your fabric like this and sew down here so that it gives you one solid strip like that, so it goes together. That diagonal kind of just helps you so that the fabric isn't bulky in that area with a stitch straight across. That's just the reasoning for that. So now I'm going to straight stitch down the diagonal like this from corner to corner. I just eye it, but you can use tape or something, or you can mark them if you need to, or you can overlap the fabrics, whatever works for you. And I'm going to chain stitch, so that means I'm not going to cut it in between each one. I'm just going to leave a little gap and then start the next one like this. And I'm going to grab my next strip in line, and I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to sew diagonally down that one as well. So I'm going to go through and sew all of those together into one long strip. Now I have all of them sewn together, and this is what it's going to look like, a big pile of fabric, right? So next up, I'm going to take this little tube here. It's just something that I'm recycling from some of the batting that I get. You can do that or use a toilet paper roll or whatever you'd like. So next I'm going to be trimming these. We're going to cut them apart and cut the triangles off of them. So real simple here, you're just going to go and do each one. This is what I do. I just use my scissors and I cut straight across here just to trim that off. And then once I go through and do this, I kind of work through it. Sometimes I like to just roll it and cut as I go instead of going through the whole thing and cutting them all. Whatever works for you, right? And here's how it's supposed to look once it's sewn together and the ends are trimmed off. So next up, we're going to roll this onto this little tube so that it's just easier to manage all this fabric. So it's real simple. I'm just going to put it on here and roll it up. So like I said, there's probably other ways to do this, but this is the way that I do it. And I just find it easier so that way when I move on to my next step, which is going to be making these strips into tubes, that it's all nice and organized and I don't have to deal with a tangled mess, right? Look how pretty that looks. So I have all my fabric strips all wound up here. And next up, we're going to be making the fabric tubes. So I'm going to take my batting and I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to use this handy tool here. You don't have to use this, but it helps. So I'm going to line my batting up with my fabric and I'm going to put it inside of this tube maker. So what that's going to do is it's going to fold the fabric in from the outside, and then all I need to do is fold it in half again so that you don't have any edges. Here we go. So here's how it looks when it folds it in half like that. And then all I do is then I take it and fold it in half, and this is the part that I'm going to be sewing. So if you need to pin or clip, you can do that. I just do this right here and then I add it to my sewing machine and I start stitching right down the side. I like to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you can sew down the middle. Some people like to do a serpentine stitch. There's no one way to do it. So next I'm going to be starting my strips. I like to use this magnetic seam guide because I find it helps me just keep my stitch nice and straight and keeps everything organized. So I have it ready here. I'm folding it back up and I'm going to put it in and get it ready to sew. I'm just doing a regular straight stitch down the side. Again, I'm doing a 1/4 seam allowance, but you can do what you would like. This part always seems the most tedious for me, and it feels like it takes forever to make these fabric ropes. I do want to say that you have to make sure that it's folded nicely and that you're getting the stitch on both sides. So if it starts to twist or anything as you're sewing it, you want to make sure that you're checking that before it hits your needle so that it's not, the fabric isn't moving and then you're missing it. So here's a closer view of it. All you do with that tool is you slide it down, you fold it, you make sure it's straight here, not overlapping on one side more than the other, and then I'm just going to stitch it just like that. So it's just repeat and adjust as needed. Sometimes with different fabric, it is a little more bulky or difficult to adjust using this tool to fold it. Again, you don't have to use this tool. There is another tool called the Clover that has an additional piece on the top that folds it in half a second time. You can try that as well if you'd like. A lot of people really love that. I haven't tried it, but I find this one to be easy for myself to use personally. Now that I finally have all my fabric ropes together, it is finally time to start making the rug, which is my favorite part, right? It's the funnest and you're almost done. So I'm going to find my beginning here. And I'm going to wind all of this rope onto this paper towel tube. You don't have to do this. You can roll it into a ball or put it into a little bin or something like that. But this is just to keep that rope from tangling, because when I first did my fabric rug, oh my goodness, it got twisted and these were just a hot mess and tangled, and you don't want to deal with that. So you're going to want to find some way to kind of organize these ropes so that it's more manageable. With this, I like the paper towel because the roll, I can put it on a shower curtain rod underneath my sewing desk, and then it just unwinds as I use it. I just pull it out. And the same with my batting that goes on there too. So this is just how I do it. Like I said, you can find your own way to do it or do this way, whatever works for you. This way does take a lot of time and it is a pain. You can see it twisting and ends up hurting my wrist. So I did recently changed to using one of those electric cord wheel winders with a handle. I've seen people using those, and I'm telling you, if you do these often, that will help your wrists with this process. But I wanted to do this for the video because I just thought it's so pretty. I loved making these, and you can see the fabric. So here it is, all of them together. I use clips on the end to kind of help secure it because it does want to kind of unfold off the edges as it grows. I always feel so accomplished after this point. It's like, yes, I finally got all this done and I'm ready to go. So next I'm going to take my strip and I'm starting in the center strip. And what that is we're going to measure out how much fabric you need before you fold and start. I'm starting with 28 inches. I'm using a 40 strip jelly roll, so I wanted to do a 28-inch start. I've done those before and I like about the size that comes out. It runs to be about 24 by 48-ish or 50 depending on how you sew. So here I'm just marking out to my 28-inch and I'm going to clip it right at that mark. That clip is where I'm going to do my first fold for my center. There are different ways to do your start, but this is just the way that I learned and I found it helpful for me. So you flip it to the side and then flip it back down under like this. And then you go all the way down to the bottom and you're going to repeat that one more time in flipping it, making sure that you're going to cover that tip down there so we get that in when we sew. So now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to pin it in place. I will also say that I like to do mine with the seam on the outside. A lot of people like to have it with the other way where the fold is on the outside, but it does not matter which way you do it really. It's just more for a look. I mean, some people worry about the seam being on the outside of the rug, but I haven't had any issues. And it's just, I find it easier to have the seam on the outside to make those curves in the beginning. I feel like my fabric just works better this way. But you can totally do it whichever way you'd like and flip it if you'd want. I just wanted to make a note of that. So again, I'm just pinning it and then I'm going down here and I'm going to adjust my bottom and I'm going to flip that and then flip it back up. And I'm going to pin that as well. It gets a little tricky here, especially working with long oval rugs because the fabric wants to just do what it wants to do. So you have to pin it and, monkey around with it as you go, I find. And I'm going to show you here up close here in just a second how it looks so you can see it a little bit closer. So here's how that second one fold looks. This is how I do mine. And then up here is the first one. So this is how they look. I'm going to be sewing across that flap here up the top. This is going to be my path. I'm going to sew there and then I'm going to sew all the way down there. And that's going to be my path. I already sewed across the flap and sometimes it can be a little tricky with the bulk there. Sometimes I just lift my foot a little bit and help adjust the fabric as I go. And now I'm doing down the first center. I'm doing a zigzag stitch. My settings I like to use are 5 for length and 3 for width. Depending on your fabric you use and how you want it to look, you might want to adjust those settings as you learn and do that. When you're sewing down this first strip here, you really want to take your time and just make sure that your fabric is adjusted and sitting straight next to each other. You don't want the fabric to overlap. You want it to be butted up right next to each other and just gently glide it as it goes through so that way you get a nice, straight, smooth center strip here for your rug. There's a lot of adjusting with your fabric. You want to make sure that this rope over here is always free and not tight, so you'll see me adjusting it a lot and moving it. Once I get down here to the bottom, you're going to want to sew across that little flap there. So make sure you take your pins out as you're going. Don't forget about them. You don't really want to sew over those. I'm taking all my pins out and then we're just going to press this a little bit here. I don't have it on a high setting, just very lightly, just to kind of get it to press down to help me for when I go to sew over it. It is a little bit thicker right there, so sometimes it's a little bit sensitive depending on your machine and how it works. So just going over it until the needle gets over that flap, and then I'm going to leave the needle down and I'm going to lift my foot and I'm going to swing it around so I can bring my stitch down that flap. I then go just a little bit past that line where I'm going to be sewing down the next strip, and then I'm going to put my needle down again and lift my foot and move it back. Sometimes you may need to adjust. I'm going to adjust the fabric under there just a smidge so that it lines up good. You can see I'm going to move it right now, and then going to start sewing right down the next line here. I'm going to adjust my fabric again. You want it to be nice and straight, not curved or to the side. You really want to pay attention to that. That will help you to make sure that that center stays straight. These first two corners are really tricky. So this is where you're really going to want to bunch your fabric up. I start up there and I put a pin, and then I'm working my way. You can see you're going to want to kind of like accordion bunch that fabric on the inside. It needs to be bunched up so that the fabric on the outside edge stays nice and round. That's what you want. So you can see here, you gotta make sure that you get around that left side there too. See the nice curve, that's what you're aiming for. And then you can pin it, and then you can press it with your little iron too if you want to. I find that it helps in the first few rounds going around those corners. It kind of just helps secure that fabric down and helps you get that stitch over and around those corners. You really want to take your time and just make sure that everything's nice and secure and flat and to your liking, because once you stitch it, that's how it's going to be and that's how it's going to look. So again, here I am pressing it, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew it. Now, when you're going around these curves, you're going to want to take your time, very much so, and go slow. So I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. This is real time, so this is me really stitching it and how it goes. I'm going to take my pins out as I go, and once I get down to this edge here, I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to gently move the fabric on the left just a teeny bit with each stitch. This can get real tricky. If you pull or move it too fast while you're sewing, you're going to get those wonky stitches. And so like just doing it real slow and a little bit by little bit, that's really going to help you while you're going around these corners. So you're going to see me fold my rug up. Over here on the left, you can see I bunched it all up. It's just so that I can manage it. With it being a long oval rug, it kind of gets a little wonky to kind of maneuver sometimes. So I just fold it up and it helps me to move it. So now once I'm coming back around here, I'm going to unfold that and I'm going to adjust it, take my pins out, and I'm going to slowly start to swing it around and keep stitching. And then I'm going to go, and it's going to be just a straight shot down. This is my favorite part. I feel like I fly here. It's like, whee, I get to really go. And then you got to slow down real slow around those corners. So here I'm just adjusting my fabric down at the bottom, getting it all situated so that it lays nice here. And then I'm just going to sew down the side here, as you can see. Now, I am gently gliding it. It looks like I'm pushing it, but I'm not really. I'm just placing my hands on top to keep it so that it doesn't move left or right to get a wonky stitch. It's going to be straight. So see, I did that right there so you can see that I'm just gliding, letting it glide. Let the machine do the work. That's going to help so that everything stays nice and smooth and flat as you're doing it. And just adjust as you go so that way everything's nice. Now we're back down at the bottom again, and we're going to repeat the same process. This is the second one, and it's a little tricky. Well, technically the fourth going around. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to really bunch that fabric. And when I say bunch, you really want to bunch it, because sometimes when I first started, I thought I was bunching enough, and I wasn't. So you can really see in there, depending on your fabric too, it might need some different bunching and stuff, a little bit more, a little bit less. So I'm pinning all the way around to the side here. And I'm just adjusting to my liking. Then I'm going to take my mini iron again and just press it just a little bit, just to press it down. And then I'm going to start again and I'm going to sew down. So once I get here, I'm going to take my time, take my left hand here and just gently move the fabric as I stitch. With each stitch, I'm gently just inching it around like that, just to get it nice and slow, as you can see. Again, I'm rolling it up. That just helps me. You don't have to do that. If If you have a nice long flat surface, which I do, up to your sewing machine, that's going to help a lot with these rugs as well. Bring it back around, adjust your fabric, and then start again down the side. Again, you want to just have this strip gently lay next to the next one. You don't want it to overlap. That will cause some issues with your rug not laying flat as well. So just let it gently glide through, let the machine do the work. I did want to show that sometimes you will get a little hole where the stitches didn't quite make it or you move too fast. So I'm going to put a pin in it, and then when I run out of my bobbin thread, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to go over that edge. Another tip, if you see your fabric in the middle here is starting to curve to the side, just give it a gentle tug in the other direction. You definitely don't want to keep sewing it if it has that bend. So here I wanted to show you just how it looks as I'm sewing the fabric here together. This gives you a nice view of how I handle it. This is in real time, so it's not sped up or slowed down or anything like that, on how I make my rugs. You just take your time, don't rush. That definitely helps. Make sure that you're pulling the cord out, that fabric rope there. You don't want it to be tight. You want it to be nice and loose and available for you to use. I find that folding the rug up definitely helps move it, and it kind of gets that heavy weight off the end. Makes it much easier to handle and move. Here I'm just trimming off a stray little thread that I found. Here's another up close so you can see how the fabric moves through the sewing machine. I like to use a walking foot. I find that it helps, but you can use what you'd like. It's not necessary or absolutely needed for making these. As the rug grows, you definitely find that folding it up to be able to move it helps a lot. So I just wanted to show some different angles just so you can see how I'm moving it, where my hands are positioned, and how I move my rugs and what I've found to work for me. Obviously, you may find some different ways that work for you, but I thought, just seeing the different angles would help you guys to kind of see how to handle your rug. you're pushing or pulling, that's when you're going to start getting all the waves. And with that weight of the fabric, as the rug grows too, that can really have an effect on it. So again, see here, I'm just rolling mine up. Sometimes I roll it into another fold, depending on how long they get. And as the rug grows, when you go around these corners, these ends here, you don't need to bunch that fabric up as much. It kind of just do it as it goes, you know. You can kind of tell once you get doing it too that it just doesn't need as much fabric, you know. You kind of want to go the outside with that natural curve look of the rug. You really want to take your time around these ends, especially too when the rug grows. It can be tricky because of all that extra weight of the rug, and you got to make sure that that rope feeding in isn't being tugged. It's a lot, but once you learn how it works and how you can get your rug flat, you're just going to love it, and you're going to be like, yes, I'm good to go. I take my time, I just adjust the rug as I go and move it around. Here's another angle so you can see. I go about to here, and I'm lightly moving it with my left hand just to help guide it. And then I'm going to fold it because now it's starting to get heavy in this area. You can feel it. And now it's going to be a little bit more easier to move as I go around the end. This is in real time, so this is how slow I'm going. Now we're finally to the end. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do your end, but this is how I do mine. I'm going to cut with my scissors at an angle like this. I'm going to leave the batting in and everything. Just cut this section off here. And it's going to look like this. And this is how I do mine. So then when I get down to here, I'm going to just kind of mess around with this end. I'm going to take a little tool here and kind of just press it and kind of butt it up next to it how I want it to, just to kind of get it all nice and snug, adjusting as I go. I don't really want that batting showing, so I want to try to get it as flat and right up there close as possible. Just adjusting how I see fit as I go. Then I'm going to back stitch over it and then bring it down one more time just to make sure that that end is nice and secure. Sometimes I have to lift my foot up and readjust because as I'm back stitching, the weight of the rug kind of makes it want to go wonky and move. I'm going to check the back to make sure it got on both sides. I don't need to stitch over any extra. And here's how it looks. So this is how I like to end mine. And here is a closer look. Next, I'm going to iron my rug out a little. Sometimes there's a little puffiness or a little bit of a wave. I just give it a nice press all the way around. Just make sure everything's sitting how I want it to. And here it is, my finished rug. Ah, it is such a wonderful feeling once you get through and hear it and it's done. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and you can find me on Facebook and TikTok for more.